Well, I have entitled today's message, A Miracle Mom? Really? Well, happy Mother's Day, all you moms out there. Although we've already said that. You know, moms are great, but they're not perfect by any means. And the expectations on moms today are so high that it's incredible, not to mention the fact that women seem to have built within them this ability to be able to put so much pressure on themselves, especially when it involves their kids. They want to be the best mom, and they take things so personally. It is so incredibly hard. I have to imagine. It has to be so incredibly hard to be a mom. But we want to encourage you today. Moms, you are absolutely the greatest, and we love you, and we honor you, and we thank you, and we respect you. Now, that's how I would say it. But I want to show you a video now from Kid President, and you'll find out who he is in just a second. And I think that perhaps he says it better than I can.
This one goes out to moms. On behalf of all the kids in the world, here are 2 things every mom needs to know. Number 1, put down your phone, unless your kid is named Phone. Number 2, don't name your kid Phone. That's just not right. That's messed up. Number 3, we love you. It's just sometimes we don't know how to say it. Sometimes it just comes out screaming or crying. But the next time your kid screams, you know what they're really saying is, I love you, Mom. You're beautiful. Thank you for not naming me Phone. 4, stop cleaning. Our house isn't messy. Our house is awesome. It's awesome because we live in it. My mom got stuff to do. Number 5, Mom upside down is wow. Doesn't really mean anything, but I just thought it was really cool. Wow. It should be like this. Wow, 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 wow. Number 6, while I have you here, I want to take a second and talk about meatloaf. Meatloaf's like a loaf of bread, but it's meat. Mom, we love you, but let's cool it on the meatloaf. Number 7, thank you for cleaning up all the poop. Number 8, have fun for once. We love to see you have fun. Dance in the grocery store. I bought all this stuff. Or sing in the middle of a driveway. Oh, it'll feel great. And then it'll scare your kids so much they'll be quiet. Number 9, hug more, shout less. Look, I get it. Sometimes we do some things wrong. But growing up is scary. There's school, there's tests, there's telling times, there's clocks that have hands, there's tying your shoes, and kilograms and kilometers.
Kilograms?
I don't know, it's hard, but that's why I go to school. It's just hard to grow up. Sometimes we just need moms to tell us everything's okay. Number 10, the secret to changing the world, moms. Without moms, none of us will be here. Moms, kids love you, and you. If every mom in the world knew how awesome they were, every problem in the world would be fixed. From kids everywhere, thanks for believing in us, putting up with us, and straight up loving us. Mom, you keep us dancing. Send this to a mom, any mom, somebody who's been an awesome mom to you. Let them know you wouldn't be here without them. Kid President out.
He sure is a cute kid, isn't he? Yeah. Now, it's obvious that he loves his mom, but it's also obvious as I watch this video that he knows that his mom is not perfect. For instance, he says things like, put down your phone. Of course, unless your name is Phone or whatever he said. Stop cleaning. Cool it on the meatloaf. Have fun for once and hug more. Shout less. It's obvious. He loves his mom, but he understands what we all have come to understand, and that his mom, as much as he loves her, is not quite perfect. And that brings me to our story for today. It's a story of a mother and son, a story of Mary and Jesus, and they're at a wedding. And it's kind of hard to think of Mary as just an ordinary woman, because we read of her on the pages of Scripture, and she is so renowned, and she is so impressive, and she's even so intimidating if you read her story and you consider what she went through, even at a very young age, that one church has chosen to venerate her and even has come to the conclusion that she is sinless. But that is just not so. Mary was less than perfect, even though she was the earthly mother that gave birth to Jesus. She was chosen for God's special task, but at the same time, she was just a mortal woman, and the Bible says that there is no one who's righteous, and no one does good all the time, not even one. And that, my friends, includes Mary. So before we get too far into the story, I'd like to read the first 3 verses of John chapter 1 as it describes the occasion for which I'm going to speak today. John chapter 2, verse 1. And I'll read through verse 3. John 2, verses 1 through 3. On the 3rd day, a wedding took place at Cana in Galilee. Jesus' mother was there, and Jesus and his disciples had also been invited to the wedding. When the wine was gone, Jesus' mother said to him, "They have no more wine." I want to stop there and talk about this occasion. First, I want to talk about a wedding. Now, our weddings in this country, they can be as simple as you would like or as elaborate as you wish. And although they take a lot of planning, and when that day comes, they take the better part of one day, they in no way even come close to comparing to a Jewish wedding, especially a Jewish wedding in that day and in that time. Our weddings are fancy, but in comparison, they're nothing. They cannot match the vibrancy of the Jewish culture and how they view and how they carry out the whole wedding plan. It usually started out early in the day with the time of feasting, as they work up to a time sometime late in the evening, and that's when the father of the bride would take his daughter by the hand. Sometimes she would place her hand on his arm, and they would parade through the town with the wedding party so that everybody could come out and congratulate this new bride. And then finally, they would arrive at their destination. That would be at the groom's house after they trudged all over the village. And the wedding would generally take place outside at the front door of the groom's house. And then after the wedding ceremony, the groom would now take his new bride all around town all over again, taking the absolute longest route up and down every side street and every alley and every main street to greet as many people as they can for them to come out and to congratulate this new couple. And then they would make their way back to the father's house. And after the wedding ceremony and after the party would take place, that's when the real celebration would begin. For nearly a week after this, sometimes a full week, the newlyweds would have an open house at the father's house. And they would be treated like royalty. They would dress up in their finest clothes. Oftentimes they would even wear crowns because they were king and queen for the week. And then the groom's family too, as a part of this festivity, would be responsible to provide all of the refreshments for that time period, which for a family that lived in relative poverty, that could be a very, very difficult thing for them to do. So they would have to save up for a very, very long time. The groom himself would have had to have brought a dowry from his own home to help show or give a down payment of what he can do for the bride. It was very much a communal thing. And so when this wedding took place, everybody in the community and extended family, if they lived in the town or not, they were all invited to come, and it was an open house that lasted for an entire week. And that's what this wedding of chapter 2 of the book of John is all about. It's about that week-long wedding that had festivities galore from morning to night. The only problem was they ran out of wine, and that was a big no-no. That was a great transgression. I know that sounds silly, but it was. It was not only embarrassing to the host family, it not only spoke to their inability to be able to provide for their children and to accommodate all the wishers well, all the people that came to wish the family well in this new endeavor, but it was also a violation of reciprocal laws of hospitality. In other words, if you were invited to a wedding and you went, you were provided for lavishly. When you went to somebody else's party at their wedding, you expected the same reciprocity. You expected to have a joyous time, and you expected to have an abundance of refreshments. And if you came and the host ran out of wine, that meant that you could actually have to go to court. You could be sued. That's how serious that it was. That's how interconnected the entire community was. Jews still practice that same concept today. That's one reason why they maintain so much wealth. They keep it within the community as they pass it back and forth between families. And if a family cannot provide a common necessity, then they can be taken to court and sued for libel. They didn't take care of the basic need. Not only that, but the young couple could also suffer as well and be strapped in order to pay back what was lost in the anguish of not having enough wine at a party. I know that sounds extreme, but that was part of the culture in that day. And so what we find in this chapter is a crisis now has occurred. And we know that Jesus and Mary are there. Before I go any farther, let me talk about the wine, just so we understand each other. The wine that they would have had at that time period is not like what partygoers would partake of necessarily today. Back then, it was considered to drink strong drink as something that would be barbaric. I know that there were people that did drink, but according to a lot of Greek and Roman writings, I mean, there's a bunch of them, it seemed as though that all wine was mixed with water. And it was usually a ratio of 2 to 1, all the way up to 20 to 1. So they only drank two things basically in those days. They had a few others, but basically there were two things. There was water and there was wine. And it wasn't suggested that they drank either separately. So it was usually a wine-water mixture, and that's the kind of wine, really, that we're talking about here. You see, the Jews, they had the same opinion as the Greeks and Romans on wine. A history book, semi-history book that was written about 150 years before the time of Jesus, called 2nd Maccabees, says this: "It is harmful to drink wine alone, or again to drink water alone." There it is, you mix them. "While wine mixed with water is sweet and delicious and enhances one enjoyment." Another commentator said this: "Only barbarians drank wine unmixed. And the mixture of wine, of water, of equal parts, 1 to 1, was called strong drink." The Bible calls it strong drink. And that was actually frowned upon. It was the custom, basically, to mix it 2 to 1. 2 parts water, 1 part wine. And so what you get from that is this, that most wine in that day was somewhere between 2 1/4 and 2 3/4 alcohol. So even by today's standards, it didn't meet the qualifications for an alcoholic drink, which is 3.2%. That's what our country says. That's what we say, 3.2. To them, it was much less. It was still alcoholic. It just had a little bit of alcohol in it. And you would have had to have had a truckload of wine even just to get tipsy. Believe me, they did, because they would be drinking wine all day and into the night, and the next day they would get up and they would do the same, and surely after a while they would feel the effects. It would make them merry. It would lighten their mood. I'm not advocating for that. I'm simply saying that's what happened. Thank you for that amen, Roy. But if that's all you focus on, you're going to miss the whole point of the story. So let's get back to Mary. Just wanted to get that out of the way. Now, some believe that this wedding was a marriage between Joseph and Mary's, one of Joseph and Mary's daughters. Now, that's pretty doubtful. However, it does appear, because of how integral Mary seems to be as a part of this wedding, that it was probably a relative or a very close friend. We don't know exactly what her connection is, but we do know that when they ran out of wine, she took it very personally. And the great thing is about it all is that when they did run out of wine, she knew who could fix it, because her son was there. A crisis had occurred, but never fear, Jesus is here. That's right, Mary's son could come to the rescue. Now, he was probably about 30 years old at that time. He was a grown man, but it didn't make any difference, because that is still Mary's boy. Moms, you know what I'm talking about. And the cool thing is, or the common thing is, maybe I should say, is that she doesn't ask him to fix the problem. She just pretty much tells him to. She says this in verse 3. When the wine was gone, Jesus' mother said to him, they have no more wine. And that leads me to this observation. You see, she didn't really ask him. She just said, they have no more wine. Maybe there was something in the inflection of her voice or something in her eye that made her message to her son plain. Jesus, fix it. That's it. And he plainly got the meaning of what she was trying to convey with those few words, like every good son would catch on to, especially by the time he's 30. And so he responds this way. He says, woman, why do you involve me? My hour has not yet come. The time is not right, Jesus is saying. This is not how things are supposed to be handled. The Message Bible translates this verse this way. Don't push me, Mom. You see, Mary was a good woman, and she was probably a great mom. I mean, she was chosen for a very special role in all of God's plan to be the mother of Jesus. And she was chosen because she was a good woman, and she was a woman of faith. God chose her because he knew that she would do the right job, but she wasn't much different from any other mom. She was a little bit, as the Message Bible might indicate, on the pushy side. He's 30 years old, and she's still trying to run his life. But you know what? Moms always know best, so I'll let you off the hook there, because she's still the mom, and he is still her son, and that's just the way that it's going to be. Even with Mary, the mother of God himself. She's going to tell him what for. Hey, they're out of wine. I know what you're saying, Mom. He gets the picture. He makes the observation. She's trying to take control of his ministry. And it may not just be because of her close connection and responsibility there at the wedding. You see, up until this time in the book of John, John is unfolding the fact that Jesus is coming to his own in his ministry. And she would have noticed this in her son's life. He has been declared to be the Son of God, and from the beginning he was God in the flesh who was tabernacling among his people. He was gathering disciples to himself, and now he and his disciples, they show up at a wedding. So there is probably this air of messianic fervor, and Mary knows that God has a very special plan for her son. And so right now, maybe not the most important issue is the fact that they're running out of wine, but now is the time for my son to shine. He's the Messiah. Besides, son, you're almost 30 years old. You got to start doing some Messiah stuff before anybody's going to really see you as a Messiah, you see. So you're not doing it in the right time. So just like a good mom, she's going to make sure that she takes care of business, and she pushes her son, it seems, although it's all part of God's plan, don't get me wrong, from an earthly perspective, she's going to make sure that her son is seen. And what a better time would there be than at this public occasion where all the town and all the family could see her son, Jesus, do some Messiah stuff and take care of business and fix the problem that's happening here. Now, if we would read on in the story of their interaction, the interaction between Jesus and Mary, his mother, we would see that perhaps this is the first time, but she kind of had a habit of trying to get involved in his ministry and perhaps even control it a little bit. For instance, in Mark 3, we find Jesus had chosen his disciples. He had sent them out to preach the good news, to repent because the kingdom of God is at hand, and he endued them with power to cast out demons. And then in Mark Chapter 3, verse 20, it begins and it says this: Jesus entered a house, and again a crowd gathered, so that he and his disciples were not even able to eat. And when his family heard about this, they went to take charge of him, for they said, "He's out of his mind." And if you read on a few verses later, when the family gets to the house, it says this: Then Jesus' mother and brothers arrived. Standing outside, they sent someone in to call him. A crowd was sitting around him, and they told him, "Your mother and your brothers are outside looking for you." "Who are my mother and brothers?" he asked. Then he looked at those seated in a circle around him and said, "Here are my mother and brothers. Whoever does the will of God is my brother and sister and mother." Did you catch that? Jesus is saying, it's by faith that you become part of my family. He wasn't disrespecting his family. He wasn't disrespecting his mother. He was speaking on another plane. And yet, even the closest people in his family didn't figure it out. They show up at the house, and you know what they're going to do? They're going to take him away. They're going to take charge of him. They're going to take charge of his ministry, and they're going to silence him. That's what it says. They went there to take charge of him. You know what that means, don't you? They're basically going to go in there, they're going to kidnap him, they're going to take him home, they're going to put him in bed, they're going to serve him some chicken noodle soup, and they're going to make him promise that he won't go out and do anything bad like that again because he might hurt himself or somebody else. Now, I don't know if all of this was actually Mary's idea. Maybe they were sitting around the table and the brothers and sisters were talking, and Mary began to hear what they were saying, and maybe she started to think in her mind and in her heart, "That's my son, and he's in trouble. Yeah, we better go get him." And so she had joined the family. Why? Because she's a mama, and that's what they do. She knows what's best for him, even if he doesn't. And things may turn out bad for him unless she intervenes. Now, moms, I think you understand what I'm saying. Dads have that same feeling, so I can vouch as a parent that that's what happens. And that's kind of, in a way, my point. Here at the wedding, Mary didn't necessarily act in a perfect manner. She wasn't perfect. She was the typical, if you want to say typical, meddling mom. And there were times as a mom that she just couldn't keep her hands to herself. She had to get her hands dirty, she had to get involved, and she had to fix things, even for Jesus, because he just wasn't doing what she wanted. And even this morning I was reminded of how moms are. Remember the mom in Ferguson, Missouri that now is famous? When her son was taking part in the riots just a couple of weeks ago, and she goes out there, and man, I first saw that video, and of course they didn't have any sound on it, and that's how I would suggest that you watch that video. She goes out there to get her son, and all you see is this mom standing in front of this young man, and all of a sudden she just reaches out and she just starts slapping that kid. And he turns his back. He doesn't do anything. I didn't know that it was mother and son. And he's walking away. And this looked just like a mom to me. As this anger and this frustration was building up in her, she was snatching him out of the jaws of trouble in the midst of this rioting in Baltimore. And she's walking a few steps behind him. And all of a sudden, man, she just lunges forward one more time. She starts slapping him in the back of the head. Get out of here. Go home. She was desperate to get her mom out of trouble, because that's what moms do at all costs. They protect, they watch over their kids, and they won't give up on them till the bitter end. And that's what Mary was doing. She was simply trying to help Jesus and to keep him safe. And it doesn't mean that she was a bad woman just because she wasn't very perfect. As a matter of fact, let me be very clear on this. Mary was a nice lady and a great woman of faith, no doubt. God wouldn't have chosen her if she wasn't. But at the same time, she was a regular mortal woman, and she had the same weaknesses that we all have. I mean, there are times when we have all made wrong decisions, bad decisions. Haven't you ever made a bad decision? How many of you have ever made a bad decision? Yeah, everybody makes bad decisions. You've even made decisions that you hope, because they're so bad, that nobody finds out about. That's how bad they are. Because we all do it. And that's what makes Mary's story so powerful to us today. Even Mary, this elevated person in Scripture that is a part of God's plan like nobody else, is not perfect. She has to get involved. She has to be a part. She even makes mistakes sometimes, just like all of us, just like every mom, because even moms aren't perfect. Now, if you're a mom like my wife, you're right all the time. And I always debated that for many, many years, until we took a personality test that was very comprehensive when we went for our church planting. For our church planting process, we had to take this personality test, and it was very extensive. And they gave us each this big folder. And it was actually a binder, and it had 100 pages in it or so. And it gave you the rundown on your personality, told you everything about you that this test proved. Now, I don't put a whole lot of trust in tests. They're not 100%, but this one impressed me. It was pretty good. And we're sitting there at the table, and we're flipping through the pages, and I'm probably going to get this wrong, but that's typical. And we get to this one page, and all of a sudden I look over and I see on her book it says, "You are always right." Now I've got it in writing. There's a monster that's been created, and I don't know what to do. But I tell you, most of the time, moms are always right. You may not like it, but they're always right. And they always do what's best for kids. She's just like us. And that leads me to the order of verse 5. Look what she says. His mother said to the servants, "Do whatever he tells you." Now, even though Mary was meddling at the wedding, she kind of did it in the right way. She was pushing Jesus, yes, to fix the problem, but she didn't go into a lot of detail. She simply assumed that he was going to listen, and she had confidence that he could indeed fix the problem. He said, "Just do whatever he tells you to do." Jesus, they ran out of wine. "Fine, Mom, I get the picture." And then she turns to the servants and she says, "Okay, do whatever he says to do." He's kind of left there probably standing, and they're like, "What?" Then they start looking at him, and I know he's Jesus, and I don't think he was like, he knew what to do, right? So that would be what I would do. Like, okay, I got to come up with a plan here. Jesus knew what to do, and Mary had faith that he could fix the problem. And even though you may be a mom that is imperfect and you make mistakes, you can never go wrong by telling your children this truth. In faith, do whatever Jesus tells you to do. You may be wrong in so many ways, but if you will hold to that, if you will simply remind your children on a daily basis, do whatever it is that Jesus tells you to do, your kids, in the end, will be fine. If they listen. Moms may make mistakes, but Jesus never does. And if your kids will listen to them, they'll be all right. And if your kids listen to Jesus and they're all right, moms, you can take your hands off of them. You don't have to run their life anymore. They're in God's hands. And when you ever see them slip, at the same time, you're still the mom, so I also give you permission to step in, slap them in the head, tell them do whatever Jesus does or tells you to do, and stop being silly. Moms, you may be imperfect. That's okay. Jesus is always right. And if your kids are doing what Jesus tells them to do, they're going to be fine too. So that brings me to the outcome of the whole story. It is true that Mary was Jesus' earthly mother, and she had that great honor and distinction, and God had given her that position of importance. And because she was the mom, the truth of the matter is that she had every right to ask Jesus to deal with the situation. It was okay for her in reality to call upon Jesus to handle the situation. Because even though Jesus was God and He was God in the flesh, and even though He had stepped down from heaven, and even though He was born in a very miraculous way that only Mary really knew about and believed in and maybe partially understood, as He came into the world and as a son, as the God-man, He was still obligated to live by the very law that He gave to all humankind. And you know what law that is? Honor your father and your mother. And so Jesus in reality could do nothing less than to honor His mother. And so let's read the rest of the story and see the outcome. Verse 6 says, nearby stood 6 stone water jars, the kind used by Jews for ceremonial washing, each holding about 20 to 30 gallons. 6 stone jars, 20 to 30 gallons. Jesus said to the servants, fill the jars with water, so they filled them to the brim. And then He told them, now draw out some and take it to the master of the banquet, the master of ceremonies. They did so, and the master of the banquet tasted the water that had been turned into wine. He did not realize where it had come from, though the servants who had drawn the water knew. Then He called the bridegroom aside. This is the master of ceremonies. He calls the bridegroom aside, and He said, everyone brings out the choice wine first, and then the cheaper wine after the guests have had too much to drink. They would have had to have had a lot, and feeling a little happy maybe. But you have saved the best until now. Verse 11, what Jesus did here in Cana of Galilee was the first of the signs through which He revealed His glory, and His disciples believed in Him. In honor of His mother, in obedience to the commandment of His own law, if she wanted a miracle, He, as her son, would give her a miracle. He literally, before everyone, turned the water into wine. The pots were full. Nobody could add anything. He did it, and nobody could deny it. It was publicly known that He had done so because it says in verse 11 that He thus revealed His glory, and His disciples put their faith in Him. They saw what happened, and they believed. She wants wine? Okay, fine. He'll give her wine. And He gave her more than all the partygoers could drink, 120, maybe even up to 180 gallons of wine. That's a lot of wine. Okay, Mom, you want some wine? Here it is. They're not going to run out now. He doesn't just give her a bunch of wine. He gives her the best wine because she's His mom, and He's going to honor her. The MC, as a matter of fact, complains about this, and he goes to the bridegroom and says, hey, normally you put out the best first. Why did you wait so long? Jesus was honoring His mother in doing this because nothing was too good for His mom. And let me remind you today, nothing is too good for mothers. Even imperfect mothers believe in their kids like Mary believed in Jesus. And so kids, we owe them, and every one of us, we're all kids. We owe them the honor and respect that is due simply because of the office that they hold as mothers. Faith is when you trust Jesus enough to tell your kids, your grandkids, your nieces, your nephews, and anybody else who will listen. Don't try to fix the problem on your own. Just do what Jesus says, and you won't go wrong. If you'll do that, you may make a lot of mistakes, but you will have done better than most moms in simply telling them. Do what Jesus tells you to do. Mary had faith, and she believed, as I close. And maybe she overstepped her bounds, but she did so because she believed in her son. And women, for that reason alone, she ought to be your heroine. She ought to be our heroine. Because as a woman of faith, Mary believed that Jesus could do anything. Mary had that kind of faith because she knew who Jesus was, and she had a pretty good idea what he came to do. Her faith is why God chose her. Her faith then was ultimately proven not by what she said, but by what she didn't say. It was by her quietness as she stood by the cross and watched her son die in agony that her faith in God and in her son was tested. She wasn't a sinless saint. She wasn't perfect by any means, but she was a faithful mother and a faithful servant of God. She was a woman who knew Jesus was born of her own womb, the virgin, and he was the Son of God sent to do away with the sins of the world for all who would believe. Her heart may have been broken, but she stayed true to her child until the end. She may have been pushy at times, but she never gave up. She was there when he needed her most. She may have been pushy from time to time, but she never stopped believing. She never stopped protecting. She was always there like no other because she was a mother. She exemplifies mothers everywhere, not perfect, but always true to their kids. Always true. Mothers' hearts are not their own. They wander wherever their children are. A mother's heart is with her child always, as Mary demonstrates today. And so, moms, for that very reason, we say together that you're great, and we honor you, and we love you, and we thank you. And my prayer for you today can be reflected in the words of my 7-year-old grandson, Cohen. At school, when he's number 17, by the way, in his class. Not in rank, that's just his number. He may be 17, I don't know. What are the 3 best things about your mom? And this is what he said. She's fun. I like to be around her. And I love her. That's my prayer for all of us. And for every mom to know in her heart that her kids love her. Moms, we honor you today.